30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
Hi,
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Producer of Face to Face, and Face to Face is one of two different programs that I have the privilege of hosting and producing live every single week at AccessTV.org studio. Face to Face is a show that's designed to ask the guests the hard questions and give you, the viewers, the answers and information that you deserve to know. This morning on Face to Face, I have a guest who is very actively involved in many social issues. He is currently working on a major Stop the Violence movement. And this individual has many different professional titles, but clearly two titles that stands out for the guest this morning on Face to Face. He is labeled as a human rights activist and a motivational messenger, no other than Warren B. Cooper. Good morning, Warren. How are you doing?
Grace and peace, Jonathan, and good morning to you. Thanks for the invitation to be here.
Okay, it's our pleasure. Likewise. Warren, could you let people know a little bit about yourself and background briefly before we get into our main topics of discussion?
So I'm going to bring you greetings from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is the native homeland formerly referred to as the Lenape tribe territory. I am a person who grew up in church, grew up in the midst of the civil rights movement, and have a history, both professionally and personally, of pursuing the intersection of both the sacred and the social rights active. You have me as a human rights activist, and that is true. I'm a peace advocate and activist as well, and really looking to use the arts, music in particular, to motivate people into a more constructive way of seeing.
Well, Warren, one cause that you're currently fighting and advocating for is the Stop the Violence movement. Is this movement designed for you to be actively involved in Philadelphia, or are you looking to spread this movement throughout the country?
So, yes to both questions. Philadelphia is the starting place for that. We are the name of the campaign is the Take 5 Stop the Violence campaign. It is an effort to focus people on their own participation in the violence epidemic, and it's connected with the release of a project that's called the Permanently Peaceful Project. A lot of people are talking about they want peace, but there are a lot of people who don't actually understand the components of peace. So part of this project is focused on that. The Take 5 Stop the Violence movement is scheduled to launch here in Philadelphia, commensurate with the launch of the music project in late September. And on the 28th, we'll be doing a formal launch that we hope will catch fire across the nation.
Warren, is this Stop the Violence movement something kind of new for your part, or have you been actively involved in other Stop the Violence movements in the past?
So in reflecting on that question, it occurs to me that I've, pretty much from my first or early moments out of the womb, been actually marinated in the whole peace consciousness of thinking. So I'm the son of a Black Presbyterian pastor who, once we moved from, was born in York, Pennsylvania, and spent a couple of years there. But my most significant rearing is in Philadelphia, North Central Philadelphia, where my father, J. Jerome Cooper, along with activists like Father Paul Washington and other interfaith activists among the in the North Philadelphia neighborhood area, were all really involved in what was, I guess, self-defense and the defense of community. At that time, the communities were under siege from a number of different perspectives. So from early on, I've been involved in the notion that you need to bring people of like mind together to address issues. So my church upbringing had that happening. I significantly influenced by the Quaker faith, which is a peace-focused, nonviolence focused movement. And of course, Dr. King, of course, Gandhi, and there's a lot of logic to nonviolence that supersedes any kind of religious peace. But I would say that my entire life and my entire career has been focused on figuring out how to use spiritual principles in human rights activist circumstances to get some results.
Well, Warren, when people see violence, I mean, should you get caught up into the statistical data? Because if you look at the data, a city like Philadelphia could have 400 homicides in 1 year. It could have 280. It could have over 500. And I don't know if people just assume that this part of violence is just going to be a way of life, and really we'll just focus on people that, let's say, are not engaged in violence. I mean, it's kind of a mixed question, but should people look at the numbers and, let's say, if the numbers gets reduced, particularly homicides, but other forms of violence, then we are solving the problem? Or is it more to this Stop the Violence movement that you're looking to resolve than just, let's say, the numbers of homicides, shootings, any forms of crime in general towards a long-term solution?
Okay, a few different parts to that question.
Mm.
So the numbers are relevant to the extent that they are measurements of what people see going on. To live by the numbers is really not the move. This particular movement is focused, and the campaign specifically is focused on the notion that each individual can participate in the solution to the violence issue. There are a lot of homicides in urban areas. Philadelphia leads those. And, all of that energy is based in a particular place. Each person who commits an act of violence is generally motivated by some level of misunderstanding. And a high percentage, if not the majority percentage, of violent acts that happen as a result of escalation in particular situations. So, an argument begins and then it escalates into a more violent scenario. The Take Five Stop the Violence movement campaign is focused on seizing personal responsibility in those situations. So the Take Five Stop the Violence campaign is 1, 2, 3, 4, take five. Simply taking 5 moments, stepping back, being focused on remaining calm and being conscious of the fact that you can get caught up in a situation. This is about self-awareness. And so, guns are an issue. But the people that use them are really the main issue. And this particular campaign is focused on adjusting the mindset of just regular people who, everybody's eligible to get mad, everybody's eligible to lose their temper under the correct circumstances. Take Five Stop the Violence campaign is providing tools for people to just, take five, take a breath. So I believe that the root of the once this kind of thing takes root, once this kind of thinking becomes more prevalent, the numbers that you speak of will reflect people stepping back. So I would expect that there would be a reduction in violence across the board, and it's not just guns, but just violent interactions. If everyone would take five, we would be able to hear a lot less about violence on the news.
Well, one thing you're mentioning, Warren, is kind of like, an individual look at yourself approach, because many times when you've had other stop the violence movements, it kind of leads into other areas, let's say law enforcement. We need to get more money. We need to deal more with students and kids. We need to get more parental involvement. And I would assume that would be still helpful and still needed. But at the same time, you're not looking with this movement to start pointing the finger and saying, well, until law enforcement or into elected officials or into parents or into kids with bad behavioral, just the everyday individual. But actually, it is kind of pointing the finger, because if everybody, and I hate to just stop and change the whole topic, but if everybody, like you mentioned, kind of looks at they self, whether it's me, law enforcement, the everyday citizen, the gang member, that kind of would start to answer some questions of what can I do to help correct and make the situation better? Or is it still more to it in a comprehensive measure that you're looking to achieve with this Stop the Violence movement?
So, you know, to be clear, there are lots of different factors, some of them aggravating, others of them, in terms of why there's violence and how violence shows up. And, certainly police violence in particular communities, well, that's a thing. That's an issue. That's a real piece. The commission of violence in crimes, well, that's, a real thing. And that has particular roots that are systematically inspired. Our position is that all change starts with individuals. And in terms of finger pointing, so one could look at all of those different aspects of systematic activity and or behavior that contribute to the overall environment where violence is encouraged, instigated, and supported, really, in many ways. As relates to finger pointing, so if you're pointing a finger at yourself, if you're pointing a finger at someone else, there are a few that point back at you. And I'm of the mind that all of what needs to happen as relates to the solution to violence is within each one of us. And it's not a top-down solve the issue problem. It's a take personal responsibility in participating in the de-escalation of the thing. This is not a magic potion, where you put a couple of drops on it and the thing goes away. This is, like, you take a pot off the stove, it's still a hot pot, but it's not heating. And so there is a cooling that begins once you remove it from the heat source. We're looking to reduce the heat source. The heat source is people's own entitlement to act out on their own anxiety or their propensity to blame other people for things that are happening. So certainly if somebody comes and hits you, so they came and hit you. And that's a different conversation than you starting a parking place argument with someone that escalates in someone getting a gunshot. So all of this is about people being entitled to what they think their opinion is, and in many cases, that opinion is not informed. What we're saying is that if you just take a moment, step back, that particular activity, when everyone is participating in it, naturally lowers the temperature of the circumstance. It takes the pot, if not off of that heat, it certainly brings the level of the heat down. And what we're looking to do is bring the level of the heat down. There are a lot of things to be upset about, and people have the right to be upset. What we need to do is develop the discipline of being able to disagree peacefully and to being able to solve our issues in ways that don't include our entitled access to violence.
Well, Warren, I mean, is this something that you're kind of looking to collaborate towards the movement of similar movements of the civil rights movements in the past? At one point, Martin Luther King Jr. was working on the Poor People's March or Poor People's Movement. It never happened because he had, got assassinated. But at the same time, there was always these attentions of what people looked at in the past of the civil rights issues of a great, tremendous sense of accomplishments. It used to be a time when a white person or the Ku Klux Klan could pretty much kill a black person, and it was very little, if anything, through the judicial system could really be done about it. And I think the movements of the 50s and the 60s definitely went a long way towards eradicating many of those injustices that had taken place. Maybe what you're talking about, do you kind of have that same intention or motivation of having some accomplishments of what the civil rights movements were able to do, or are you just trying to move towards a different course within itself?
So the civil rights movement and all movements are exist because as a result of an awakening of people. People become awake to a particular circumstance. People gather their energy around discussion in terms of solution of that circumstance. And that particular energy gains momentum and becomes a movement. Most certainly, our most earnest hope and prayer is that that particular set of reactions happens as people focus on peace. There have been a lot of peace movements, and many of them have been focused on stopping war, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or some other external circumstance. I think the thing that distinguishes this approach is that it's a behavioral health approach. We look to inspire people to take a look at themselves, and you will look at others differently. There's a song from way, way back in the day that said that, and it's a true statement. So the act of being self-aware and being aware of one's circumstance, if you are in a place where you smell gas, the very last thing that should be on your mind is to ignite a match, right? That's just self-awareness, not a good time to light up. Think that that kind of self-awareness in our own personal interactions is a movement that needs to take hold, and I believe earnestly, and it's just based on simple calculations around human behavior and around cause and effect. If people are less likely to pop off, then it's less likely that something will jump off. These are things that we're after, and I am hopeful that it spreads across not just the city, not just the nation, but the world. And that's not, we want our movement to do well. This particular mechanism of approaching the issue of violence is one that's simple. Even a child can do it. And as children do it, and as adults do it, I believe that there will be a move toward less violence, and we can talk about what that movement is in other areas as well.
Well, less violence. I mean, the movement that you're talking about, starting individually sounds like a great starting point for sure. And hopefully it could lead towards a long term solution. But would it be fair to say that if you're realistically expecting violence to be reduced and you got factors that contribute to violence, if you have a drug war, a drug economy, illegal activities, it kind of leads to guns. If you have people with mental illness issues, substance abuse issues, addiction issues, it's going to lead to other problems. If you have a criminal justice system and people get caught up into a system and they have a very difficult time re-entry towards society, it could lead towards other problems. I mean, I'm saying this to say that the individual movement is very critical and it's very needed, but at the same time, if other factors are not going to be corrected in the process, is it realistically expected to think that violence, just looking at yourself, is going to be a big solution? Or can it still be a big solution despite those other areas that's not really being corrected that I just mentioned in the proper manner?
So certainly, the Take Five Stop the Violence campaign is not being offered as a fix-all
Mm-hmm.
for this epidemic. As you mentioned, there are lots of different factors, and we were speaking earlier, about the finger pointing, right? So, there are a lot of different factors, and most of the time when we are listening to discussions about those factors, those discussions focus on the sources of the problem or figuring out what the problem is. So understanding that if you have a leak and there's water showing up in a room where you are that indicates a leak, finding where the leak is important. Um, so you can approach it from that particular perspective if you're looking at it uh, broadly. Our point about the Take Five Stop the Violence campaign is that where it will not address the drug issues, like down in Kensington, where you or the violence issues in another neighborhood that are resulting or results of criminal intent and activity. Um, the vast majority of violence that happens is in everyday human interactive situations that heat up out of control. So, the Take Five Stop the Violence campaign is not a universal solution to all of the aspects that contribute to violence, but it most certainly is a tangible solution from an everyday perspective for people to simply take responsibility for their own individual contributions into violent situations. Just that awareness in and of itself. Again, I said it's not like you drop something on it and it's a magic potion that makes something go away. It is more like taking a boiling pot off of the stove. Moments after you take that pot off the stove, the water is still boiling. It's still hot, but it's not heating. So what we're looking to do is not we can't eradicate it because it's an endemic issue, violence, but we can de-escalate it, and we can be conscious in our own presence in any situation, to instead of contributing to escalation, to just take five and just de-escalate. So it's not a magic potion, but it is a tangible approach. And it's also something that everyone can do. I said earlier that a lot of people want peace. They say they want peace, so we want world peace. Well, you can't have world peace without having peace within yourself, and this is where the conversation can get spiritual, but it's, not about any particular deity. It's about a principle of how it is that we can just live in peace.
Well,
And I believe that's obtainable.
Well, Warren, even the spiritual side, I mean, you're working on an upcoming album that's going to be released in September. Could you kind of elaborate a little bit about this particular album and what the message behind or the inspiration behind this upcoming album is all about?
So the music project is called the Permanently Peaceful Project, and it is literally offered as a practicum for how to be peaceful. So included in the music project is the lead single, which is my reconjugation of the Paul Desmond, Dave Brubeck song "Take Five." Won't you take a little time out with me? Just take five. Well, we that particular song is the theme song of the campaign, and it presents a specific thing that one can do to de-escalate and to contribute to one's own peacefulness. The title track, which is Permanently Peaceful, is itself a 6 minute de-escalation meditation. So if you're feeling heated in any particular moment and need to cool your temperature, I spend 6 minutes with that particular track, and it is, I call it the Narcan for violence. You know, everybody's now supposed to carry Narcan because anybody around you at any time could be suffering from a drug overdose. Anybody at any time could be suffering from potentially a violence overdose. So, Permanently Peaceful, the track itself is formulated to de-escalate that. Got other tunes on the we do a remake of Herbie Hancock's Chameleon, which is one of my favorite tunes, one of my 675 favorite jazz tunes. That particular tune, I wrote lyrics for that maybe 30 years ago, and it's talking about the difference between making an observation and making a judgment. So everything is not actually as it seems. Beware the chameleon. And then I have an original tune on there that's called Scat That, which is talks about the use of scat language as an alternative communication mechanism when you want to call somebody out of their name, you just say Sababa de Shanada. And they don't know what you said and you feel better. You can scat that. So the project is really, it has a playful side to it. It has a serious side to it. It is a jazz project with some significant gospel garnishes and influences. And the theme of the entire thing is that there's a path to being permanently peaceful, and permanently peaceful is being in a place where you are fixed in your balanced state to the point where anything that you encounter can't knock you off your square. So it is the project itself is kind of it provides tools on the path to that space.
And this album, you've kind of worked on it individually. Is this like a solo album that you put together, or did you have any collaborations with other artists towards the
So
production side?
so I am a jazz artist, and I have a few bands. The band that gathered to do this were my collaborators. It's the WC Jazz Consortium. I am signed to a record label that's called Peace and Harmony Records. And we are collaborating in a number of different ways to bring this message forward. All of the songs are either personal compositions or personal arrangements of mine, which include the music and the lyrics. But a record project takes a team, so we had a lot of really fabulous people working with us, and we're excited about not just the sound, but the substantive message of the project.
Warren, are there going to be any type of videos maybe that people can look at towards some of the songs? I know videos are not as normal as they used to be when you had more outlets like MTV and BET and VH1. but will there be any processes of putting videos together with some of the music and songs that you have?
So we do have video for Take Five and the Take Five Stop the Violence campaign, and the the music tracks are kind of the soundtrack for the campaign. And so there is a video that'll be and a couple of videos. I hope we're able to do a video on Chameleon, which is a is a fun kind of tune. So in about a couple of weeks, actually, before the release of it, you should look for that video.
Mm. And Warren, do you kind of look at what you're doing because you are involved in other areas, not just violence issues? I know there's many other social justice issues. Could you kind of elaborate a little bit on some other issues that you, if not directly involved with, feel passionate towards and are advocating towards?
Well, so the whole notion of justice
Mm.
and what that looks like and what that means, in the context of, I refer to myself as a Black, colored, African American Negro because in my lifetime I've been all of those things. And the notion around voting rights, the notions around all of the issues that are really connected to violence. Um, the movements that are focused on peace, specifically. I'm involved in interfaith movements, member of an intentionally interfaith community for 12 years. So developing and interacting with the number of peace mechanisms that focused on middle pieces of the Middle East, many pieces in the African diaspora of the continent, the specific conflicts that are going on there. So I continue to be involved in those uh, particular aspects, as well as pieces that really are connected to just basic rights to food, health, and shelter. Also been involved and continue to be involved in the ecological justice aspect of life. So that's really about being conscious of the global warming piece or of the pieces that are contributing to that particular aspect. So all of those are movements and efforts that I've been involved in and continue to be involved in. My current focus has been on this violence piece because it's kind of like a wildfire burning in our streets that needs addressed. And, the solutions to that issue lead to an environment where we can more uh, efficiently find agree on some solutions for some of these other issues.
Warren, do you think the political climate and the political system is critical? I know I kind of dabbed into that a little bit towards maybe pointing the finger, but when you have elected officials, let's say people who's supposed to represent the Kensington section of Philadelphia or the neglect of that area, comparable, and I'm not from Philadelphia, but I'm sure there's some high end residential areas of the city or suburban areas that really seem to have everything intact that they need. And you have an area like the Kensington section where it seems like they have nothing. Do you still look at that same what as a political structure that you would like to see eradicated? Or I don't know how you feel about politics, but I just want to kind of get your views on the political aspect of certain things in our society.
So I used to be in politics.
Mm-hmm.
I was at one point was a chief of staff for a noted state senator in our area, and I am aware of the mechanics of that particular um, genre of human interaction. Most certainly, the politics of any situation affects everything that's happening, and most certainly, from a policy perspective, um, politicians and those who are in service to the structures that are foundational in our societal coexistence. Most certainly, those are important things. Um, I, but when I was growing up, there were people who had or there was actually a line in a movie that said, "You can't fight City Hall," right?
Mm.
So that's true and not true. First of all, the fight that we're talking about is really about awareness and awakening. And most of the things, many of the things that are happening in our political systems have to do with citizens not being engaged as we are called to be engaged, right? So, yes, it's true and it's true in every urban area and really every area of this country. And I imagine you can find exhibits of it globally, where, some people are doing better than other people. Some people have access, other people don't. It's the whole nots piece. And there's a lot to say about, the behavior of the haves and the condition as it contributes to the condition of the have-nots. Um, and that is a discussion that I imagine will continue as long as there are people to have it. My thing is that if we can focus on the element that we can control, that we can begin the process of healing, begin the process of violence de-escalation, begin the process of enabling people to get what they need. Because, the political systems make it, the political systems are very hospitable environments for bacterial attitudes that are parasitic in the way that they devour resources and separate people from what they need. Um, I'm believing that as we become more responsible as human beings, that human rights will become more accessible for everybody.
Well, Warren, as we're kind of wrapping down towards the end of this program, I just wanted to add one thing because when you're mentioning point the finger at yourself and the individual on responsibility, I was told one time that a person said that everything could be important, but if you're not passionate and you don't have that fire for something, you're most likely not going to be involved and committed towards something. I say that to say I could be hungry and passionate about business, but not health. I could be hungry and passionate about politics, but not education. But it doesn't mean that I don't see the importance of education. I don't see the importance of business or some other factor. I'm just not that hungry and motivated towards it. So if individuals say, look, we think Stop the Violence movement is a good cause, and I wish you the best of luck, but it's not for me, is that a fair approach for the individual to look at life that way, or do you think they should still look at it a little bit differently?
Well, so the word should is dangerous for me just because it, imposes, what I'm thinking onto a thing as being empirical truth.
Mm.
What's clear to me is that, yes, there are lots of different issues, and there are lots of different people that are passionate about different issues. I find one of the weaknesses in all movements is that they act as silos. So somebody says, well, I'm working on gun violence. So this thing you're talking about stop the violence doesn't apply to me. Well, I'm finding that to not really be rational. It feels more territorial. Um, I think that all of these issues are connected, and that therefore there are solutions that can that can affect all of those areas. Everybody has a passion for a different thing. We're a planet of infinite expressions of different ways of being. And, there are people that are specialized in biology, there are people that specialize in chemistry, there are people that specialize in mechanics. And like sign, there are people who are motivated into activity because of something that has happened to them or because of something that seems particularly important to them. Um, I happen to believe that this particular approach to the issue of violence is one that doesn't compete with anything anyone's doing. It actually enhances every aspect of peace work that's going on, and most certainly every aspect of human interaction that's happening. It's just a simple thing. And so it's not that, well, you're working on that and that's less important than what I'm working on. Really, it's that what we are working on with this Take Five Stop the Violence campaign is relevant, important, accessible, and useful to everyone, no matter what kind of justice work they're doing.
Warren, that sounds like an excellent way to end the show. I always like to end the show on somewhat of a positive message from the guest towards the end. And as I also say every single week towards the end of the show, towards the end of the program, if there's any last words, anything that you would like for people to know about or know about yourself, feel free to do so.
So I am accessible via the website, warrencoopervoice.com. There you can get some more information about the kinds of things that we're working on. You'll be able to get some information about the project, which is called the Permanently Peaceful Project, released on Peace and Harmony Records. Um, our projected release date is the International Day of Peace, the United Nations International Day of Peace, which is September the 21st. And keep your eye out for the Take Five Stop the Violence campaign. It's like Smokey the Bear, only you can stop the violence.
All right. Well, Warren, I definitely appreciate having you as a guest this morning on Face to Face. Nice meeting you, nice talking to you, nice interviewing you. Wish you the very best of luck with your movements and any other particular cause that you're working towards. And definitely keep the faith at what you're doing. And God's willing, wish you the very best of luck. Possibly another return if it's necessary, and definitely look forward to your upcoming album to let people know about that. That's going to be released next month in September.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'd like to thank Jay Stan as well, and thank you for this, what you're doing with this particular communications medium. I think it's a very important thing, and I'm honored to be invited. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Those words are well taken, and I definitely appreciate that. All right. Okay, this is Jonathan Small. I had just enjoyed hosting this edition of Face to Face this morning with the guest Warren B. Cooper, human rights activist, motivational messenger. I felt this particular show was real enlightening, educationally wise, and definitely important and needed. And definitely wished him, as I mentioned, the very best of luck in the very near future. Currently working on a guest and actually working on a show and a guest for next week. Do not have anything confirmed or locked up, but definitely going to push real hard. More likely, I'll be trying to aim for All About You biographical show, but if not, I'll definitely come back with some particular show. And until I see you again, for people out there, have a very blessed day and keep the faith. Thank you.